Good day, thinkers, thought leaders, progressives, and dreamers. This is Craig the Writer Stewart, and I have a very special announcement for you. I know we're supposed to be on a hiatus, but in the wake of this whole Surviving R. Kelly docuseries that just premiered last week on the Lifetime Network, today I have the co-founder of the MuteRKelly movement, and this was just way too timely to try to wait and drop this show once we come back from hiatus. So this is going to be a very special podcast. I'm actually going to drop it on a day that isn't our normal day, which is Monday mornings at 10 a.m. But I'm going to go ahead and drop it now just because it's so very time sensitive and so very important. Do me a favor, please hit the share button. Please hit the share button. Share this podcast with your friends, your family, your social network. And if you're not already a subscriber, please go ahead and do so right now. Hit the follow or subscribe button. Listen and enjoy. This is very personal work for me.
Politics.
I believe I was called to tell my story, use my voice, be a voice for the community, to speak to and for a community of people that's been ignored, denied, overlooked.
Religion.
This is my life's work.
Religion.
I want to use words to uplift, heal, inspire, encourage.
Do something different. Every Monday at 10.
Orenike is the co-founder of the MuteRKelly movement. Mm-hmm. You may have seen her on the Surviving R. Kelly docuseries that aired last week on Lifetime. And so I have so many questions. Please hit the share button. I want you guys to type your questions in here too if you have any questions. And we're going to just get this conversation started right away. So the first thing that I wanted to know, when did the MuteRKelly movement start?
Okay.
Because about a year or so ago, I've been doing these lives now for about a year.
Okay.
And I remember about a year ago, I was saying to my people, because I had seen the hashtag MuteRKelly, but I didn't know that it was you behind it. And so I had seen it, and so I was encouraging all of my followers to stop supporting his music, to stop playing it, that kind of thing. So many of them that have been following me for a while, they can definitely tell you that. So when did it actually start?
It started in June 2017. So right when the accusations of what the media was calling the sex cults came out, I saw it that day on the news. I was actually sitting in my office on the computer. The TV was on. I heard that and was like, what's R. Kelly doing? Like, I hadn't heard anything about R. Kelly in a long time.
Right.
You know, I mean, I probably stopped thinking about R. Kelly or hearing about him, you know, after the quote-unquote P tape, you know, where he was sexually degrading a 14-year-old.
Right.
I hadn't thought about it really since then. So I got on Google and just kind of, you know, started looking and realized that although I hadn't been hearing about it, almost every year, every other year, more people were coming out. More people were filing charges. More people were talking about the abuse. And the sexual abuse of the underage girls. And so these families were coming out kind of like screaming into the void, and nobody was paying attention. You know, nobody was supporting them. And I became incensed. I was just enraged. I was also really upset that he was here in Atlanta because we have a huge child sex trafficking problem. So it was like, I mean, it was a lot of forces converging on me at once. Like, wow, like, why are we not supporting these families? And how dare he bring that to Atlanta? I mean, I didn't know what to do. You know, I'm not an activist, you know. I was just pissed. So I decided to start a petition to try to get him off of Atlanta radio. Very, very humble.
So it just started as an online petition? As
an online petition, yeah, to get him off of the radio.
And how many signatures did you need for that to actually happen? Or you were just trying to get a significant?
I was just trying to get a significant. I just put it on my Facebook to my friends. You know, sent out an email to folks like, hey, y'all saw this, everybody signed. They started, you know, sending it out to people. It morphed as the co-founder, Tisha Barnes, came and said she really wanted to work with me. And we created, you know, kind of this organization and decided we were going to go past the radio play, but also try to get his concerts canceled, his streaming canceled, all of his, you know, sources of income. We were going to try to cut him off at the knees. In that way, since we couldn't, for some reason, the judicial system has not been able to convict him, we were like, well, let's cut the resources off.
And a part of the lack of conviction is because in many of the cases, the parents haven't participated. Is that?
Well, that is the most famous case. So
Okay.
that is the case that of the 14-year-old that he was sexually
In the
degrading
video.
on tape. Correct.
Right.
So her and her parents did not participate, although many of her other family members did,
Like
and
Sparkle.
and verified that it was her and she was 14. But because she was not there and the parents were not there, they decided they could not say that it was her.
So why, and you may not know the answer to this, but why in that case wouldn't the state just go ahead and prosecute? Because say, for example, like if we were in a relationship and I battered you,
Right.
and even if you said, I don't want to press charges, and a lot of times the state will still press charges.
Yes.
So why didn't that happen? Or do you even know that?
I'm not really sure of that, but I do know in that particular case, he drug that out for, I believe, 6 years.
He did delay it. Yeah.
You know, so by the time it actually came to court, she was no longer a minor, and that might not have been a thing where they can do it on her behalf.
Which is another reason why it's important to not support his music. A lot of people say, well, what is it going to do if we don't support his music? Well, if he doesn't have income to delay trials and pay court costs and things like that, that's part of the reason.
That is really the whole reason that we decided to go after the money. It's because it's the money that's insulating him from the consequences of all of this. If he were Tyrone at the post office and all this had come out, he'd have been in jail already.
And it's the reason that his staff support him because, he, as my mom would say, he's greasing their palms.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So you were sitting at home, you were enraged by this whole thing, and so what kind of kickback or pushback did you get from radio when you started with the?
Well, at first I got complete silence. So nobody would return my phone calls, return my emails.
And were you contacting like the program managers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Contacting the program managers, contacting the DJs, contacting anybody at a radio station I could get the owners, Radio 1. I mean, going as far up as I could get. No response whatsoever. As the news of it got out and I started to get on the news talking about it, then I started to get a response. And the response was, yes, we know what he's been up to. Yes, we believe that he does it and it's wrong. Yes, we know that when we play him, that money goes into his pockets. And we don't care. I mean, that was basically
essentially,
it in a nutshell. And I mean, not on some like flippant, like 10-minute conversations. I would be in conversations for 30 and 40 minutes, like going through all of my logical steps. Because for me, this is not an emotional thing. It's like logical. You know what I mean? Like we, as a black community, are failing these women and failing each other. And you guys on the radio, I remember Saul Williams, the artist, said years ago, radio programming is mind programming. Y'all are normalizing him and his behavior by playing him. And we could go through all the steps and it would be yes, 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 yes. So will you stop playing him? No. So we were like, you know what? We're just going to we have to turn the tide of public opinion for radio to fall in line.
So to that point that you just made, when you said about we're normalizing it through radio and the black community is supporting this and supporting his mistreatment of black girls and black women, what do you say to all of the people that say, well, they're white men that do it, and you know, what about this guy? And you know, we're not, R. Kelly isn't the first guy. What do you say to that?
I say everybody you can name that you say has done this and is getting away with it, if it outrages you, you should start a campaign to stop them too.
Absolutely.
You know, so this idea that black men should get away with raping black women because white men get away with raping white women is ridiculous. You know, I often wonder, do we want to change the structures of oppression and racism, or do we just want better positioning within it?
Absolutely.
You know, do black men want to be
able to
white
get away
men?
with away? Yeah, do
You
black men want to be able to get away with shit that white men have gotten away with? Because we saw this with Bill Cosby.
Right.
Well, what about Harvey Weinstein? What about this one? And what about that one? But it's like, this is the conversation that we're talking about here. And the point is that we should not err on the side of morality simply because there have been some white people that have been able to get away with it.
Exactly. And it's usually just a deflection in that they don't want to deal with the conversation at hand, right? They don't want to give up R. Kelly. And I try as much as I can to be non-judgmental about that because I understand how attached we are to our favorite songs and our favorite singers. You know, when
because it takes us back to wherever.
And when we hear Step in the Name of Love, we're not thinking about R. Kelly and sex cults. We're thinking about ourselves and that time in our life, or us at the barbecue, or us at the wedding. You know, we're thinking about ourselves. And we don't want to give up those memories. So I understand that kind of emotional connection. But once you do the math and realize how much money you have been putting into his pockets, into the abuse of black women, you realize that we're all complicit. I think that's one of the great things that the documentary did, is it showed he's not doing this by himself. There's no way to do this on this scale for this long by yourself.
Right.
He's doing it because we all have decided to look the other way, and there are people who will help, and there are people who will blame the girls, and I mean, so we have all decided that this is okay for him to get away with. We're all guilty in this.
Even when we've seen, because I've seen some posts, and I've even posted one just to kind of trigger some thought. I saw a post the other day that said, remember back in high school when we were in the 10th grade, there was always that fast girl who had a drug dealer boyfriend or an older boyfriend who was coming to pick her up from the high school who was 30. So this has always been going on in the black community. The black community is full of R. Kellys.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. And what our hope is, of course, it's important that we stop R. Kelly now.
Yeah.
Like right as we speak, there are women who have not seen their families in 5, 3, 4 years.
Yeah.
You know, so it's important that we stop him now. But it's also important that we see him as a symbol for the larger problem in the African American community.
Absolutely.
You know, I read a statistic that 60% of black women are sexually assaulted before they're 18. So that just goes to show that this is a huge problem, and we don't even talk about the sexual assault of black boys.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's such a huge problem, but it's so hidden and is, you know, coded in all this masculinity stuff, and we don't want to talk about it or whatever. But sexual assault of minors is huge. And if we can come to grips with an R. Kelly, it makes it easier for us to come to grips what's happening in our community and talk about it. I tell people all the time, like, if you want to engage me in a conversation about R. Kelly, who you do not know, who is not your family, who don't know you from nobody, you know what I mean? This is not no connection y'all have. How are you ever going to be able to talk about what's going on in your home or in your church? Never. You know what I mean? If you can't even deal with an abstract person you don't know. Right. So we have to be able to do that, to look at that and say that's wrong and I'm not going to deal with it, to give ourselves the strength and the conversation and the vocabulary to deal with it in our everyday life.
Let me drop this right here because we jump right into the conversation. For those of you that are listening on the podcast, I forgot to give you my intro. Good day, thinkers, thought leaders, progressives, and dreamers. I'm Craig the Writer Stewart, and this is the Facebook live version of So Much to Say. These are my thoughts in my voice on black shit, white shit, gay shit, and everything in between. We have Oranike here. She is the co-founder of the MuteRKelly movement. Please hit the share button if you are watching on Facebook. This is a very important conversation. So what do you think? So let me ask you this. Once you got in contact, or once your co-founder got in contact with you, what did that look like? You said you guys got this ball rolling. You set up this movement. What did it look like? Did you reach out to become like a 501c3? Did you get office space? Like what is it?
No, it's two black girls on our computers, on our phones. We kind of divvied up responsibilities because she is an activist by trade. So she really focuses on the actions in each city and helping to mobilize. Like once we put it out there, there was an avalanche of people who said, I've been boycotting R. Kelly for years. I've been saying to people they shouldn't be listening to him. I'm in Chicago, what can I do? I'm in Nashville, what can I do? I'm in Detroit, what can I do? Or he's coming to my city and I want to protest. So we started to mobilize those people.
So kind of in the way the whole, kind of like Black Lives Matter.
Exactly. So they would come to us and we would say, okay, here's the way we can support you. Here's what you need to do. Find us this info. We'll write press release. We'll give you talking points. We'll do media training. We'll send you flyers, brochures, you know, all that kind of stuff so that you can do this protest. And Kenyette has been able to travel to some of those cities to be with him to do it. But I mean, they've done wonderful work, you know, in the different cities. We were able to get his Chicago concert canceled, which I never thought
would happen.
Would happen. But, you know, people really, I think, and because of the convergence of time, right? We got Me Too movement. We got Time's Up. We have right now, people are talking about this openly before when they weren't. I think it's emboldened people to go, you know what? We're not dealing with this. We're not dealing with this anymore.
So I would venture to say that most of his income now comes from touring.
All of it.
Right?
Basically. Right.
So what do you say to the women that actively support his concerts?
Well,
even with all of this information.
I would say that we have to think about our own cognitive dissonance, right? And that's hard because none of us are transparent to ourselves, right? But if 60% of black women have been sexually assaulted before they're 18, that means more than half of the women sitting in that concert have had an R. Kelly disrupt their lives in that same way. right? And they put that into a box, and for different reasons, because, you know, since I've been doing this for 2 years, I've been inundated with emails and phone calls from women I do not know talking about all manner of things. And part of it is in their own life. They have internalized the shame of what happened and taken responsibility for it, and they never put the responsibility for what happened to themselves onto the abuser. So they don't do that for R. Kelly either. They'll be the first ones to say those girls are fast.
And I've even heard women say, I've heard black women say that this kind of stuff goes on, even with the whole Me Too movement. A lot of this stuff happens, but most times they don't want to say anything. A lot of black men have not been brought down, if you will, because a lot of black women, like you said, take responsibility and don't want to bring down another good black guy.
Right. And, you know, when we're all layered in our context, right, and we bring all of who we are to everything that we do, right? You're black, you're a female, you're straight or you're gay, you're bisexual, you're abled or differently able. You know, we bring all these things. But black women tend to first put blackness as our number one, and then second, our femaleness, right? And so we are loyal to a fault to black men. But I've had to say this to many women. R. Kelly ain't Medgar Evers. He ain't Malcolm X. He ain't Martin Luther King. He ain't started no schools. He ain't built no hospitals. He don't have no scholarship fund. You know what I mean? Like, he is not somebody that we need to be rallying against. I think about this not as bringing a black man down, but as our internal house cleaning. Black people are always saying we need to clean our own house and we don't need to, you know, have the police involved in this, that, and the other. Well, we're not cleaning our house.
Right.
Our house is a mess.
But you know, one of the things that we do, and one of the things that I have felt for so long is that oftentimes we don't like. It's almost like we're afraid to have the conversation on the public street, whether it was with about R. Kelly or Bill Cosby or whatever, because it's almost like we think that we're keeping some sort of a secret from white folks.
Right.
White folks don't give a damn. And it's like, at this point, if it's for the health of our community, I don't give a damn if they know or not.
Right.
And a lot of times we don't want to acknowledge or have those conversations out in the front because we're so concerned about what the white gaze will perceive of it.
Absolutely. And I think that we have so many internal spaces where white folks ain't around, we're still not having this conversation.
We're still not having it.
Where is this conversation in the black church? Ain't no white people there. You know what I mean? Like, when we're all at Thanksgiving together, where is this conversation? You know what I mean? We just are so socialized to keep all our business secret. You know, don't tell nobody your business. Don't embarrass the family. You know what I mean? So we're very socialized in that way. And we have to break out of that for the safety of our children.
Absolutely.
Because these adults, these traumatized children become traumatized adults. And I do not get into, you know, people who were abused end up abusing other folks. That is not necessarily true. But it does mean our capacity for vulnerability, for love, for our ability to create happy, whole, healthy families is compromised. Because we have learned bad behavior and pathology from young, you know, so and we cannot help but to pass it on if we don't actively try to disrupt that cycle. And so dealing with R. Kelly is one thing, but dealing with it in our homes is another, and we've got to do both.
So, what was one of the first milestones that you reached when you had this petition? I know you said you were reaching out to radio stations. Did you ever get a radio station and say, okay, you know what, we're going to stop? I know Tom Joyner famously, was he the first?
He was the first.
To stop playing R. Kelly?
He was the first. So there are radio stations, because I have a journalist friend who's been helping me for a long time, a music journalist, and he can pull all of the play records from the radio stations. So
Like
there are radio stations, yes, who have stopped playing him. Now, they made no announcement and they did not respond, but they have not played him in months and months and months and months. So he clearly is pulled. But our first milestone was actually getting a concert canceled. And I think we were all in shock.
Yeah.
It was kind of like...
So how did you find out? How did you get word that it was canceled?
It was on the news.
Okay.
You know, the news, and I honestly now, because we've gotten so many canceled, I can't remember what the first one was. But it was in Atlanta. Atlanta went as scheduled, and the next one we were able to get canceled, and we were like, oh, okay, we can we can actually do this.
Right.
I mean, not just be harassing people to no end. Like, we can actually make a difference and get these concerts canceled. So that was a big milestone. Another personal milestone for me was having R. Kelly address the Mute R. Kelly movement in that I Admit song and in a Instagram video he did, because beforehand he kept going, I don't know why
canceling my shows. Right.
It wasn't
I've
me,
never
guys.
heard of such a thing.
Right, I have no idea why. He was doing that. And we sitting on the other side like, you know why.
Right.
So when he actually had to say, y'all can't mute me, we were both like,
Right.
Like, like it's starting to
It's becoming a
penetrate.
thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's getting to him. And then having his lawyer quit. And his publicist
I just
quit.
read that yesterday. His lawyer, his publicist.
Publicist, a PR person quit, an assistant have quit. So you start to see
the trickle effect.
When you start taking the money away, and people start seeing this is a sinking ship.
Yes.
Everybody wants to jump off. So it's like, okay, that's the point. We want to take this wall down brick by brick. So it's working.
So speaking of muting him, and I know the bigger picture is to get him off of streaming services, and that has happened. Has he been completely pulled?
No,
he hasn't been completely pulled.
So Spotify did pull him, and then got overwhelming response from the public that he wasn't convicted of anything, right? Like, y'all, if y'all gonna take him off, y'all gotta take off everybody who's problematic. Blah, 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 blah.
And see, this is my point. I remember what you were gonna say there, but this is my point. This is where I love us. I love my people. I ride hard for us. Those of you that have been watching, I ride hard for us. But my issue with us is we always boycott the shit that doesn't need to be boycotted, and then the shit that needs to be boycotted, we're not boycotting it.
Right.
Like, that was a perfect example of where we need to be contacting Apple services. We need to be contacting Spotify and whatever other streaming services to get him yanked.
Right.
And I would even venture to say to try to get his social networks, like Instagram, shut him down.
Right.
Shut him down on Twitter. Like, get all of that stuff shut down.
Right. And so part of the conversation we've been having also is a lot of these services, venues, or whatever have no morality clauses at all. When we first tried to get his concert canceled here in Atlanta, it was on the basis that it was at Wolf Creek Amphitheater, which is a Fulton County facility, which is run by my tax dollars, right? And I don't want my tax dollars going to someone we all saw sexually degrade a 14-year-old on tape.
Right.
But there's no morality clause in any of the things that they sign, so they have no legal recourse to say we're canceling you because we don't like you. You know what I mean? So as Spotify and all these things are the same. So part of our conversation with them is getting these morality clauses in place.
Right.
People want to talk about censorship. It's not about censorship. He can sing about whatever he wants to sing about. I don't care. He can get naked on stage. He can dance all over, all the stuff he's been doing. But he's committing crimes. Like, that's another thing. And so we should be able to cancel him based on his criminal behavior.
And you and I have a friend in common who we actually met through years ago. It's probably been 20 years since we met. But he and we had lunch together the other day, and he's a city councilman now over there, and he said he's going to make it his business that R. Kelly will never perform at that venue again. He actually talked to me about it again the other day when we met. So in terms of all of this conversation that's been happening across social media about R. Kelly and who's really at blame, I personally believe that he is 100% responsible because he is the adult and he should know. But there are also people that say, well, some of the girls are fast. We have to, look at that. And then the parents. Some people say it's the parent. Do you think there's a line between victim and participant?
That's a tricky one. So one, I categorically denounce the idea of fast, right? So everybody comes into their sexuality at different times. I've worked in daycares in college, and you see there's some little 3-year-olds who want to kiss on everybody and hug on everybody and touch themselves, right? All of that is natural. And at 13, 14, 15, that is when your body kicks into, now it's time to make a baby, right? So your biology is leading you towards sex. We as a evolved society have said we want to give people time before they make life-altering decisions because we recognize that when your brain is not fully formed at 16, 15, you have no idea how to calculate the future consequences for the decisions that you're making today. So we have designated that we're trying to create a safe space in that really tricky area where your body and hormones are going crazy. Of course, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds want to have sex.
Right.
Of course.
Right. They
also want to eat ice cream every day for dinner. Most of parents don't let their child decide what they wear to school or what they eat for dinner every night. You know what I mean? So the idea that children want a thing and so that makes them bad in some way is problematic to me. There is no such thing as fast. They might be hard-headed. But there is no such thing as fast. There might be defiant, there might be sneaky, or all those things, but fast does not work, especially as an excuse for sex with a grown man. In the bed, in those beds in R. Kelly's home, there was a 14-year-old, then there's a 35-year-old or a 37-year-old. There's only one adult there. And so the only person responsible for anything that's happening there is that adult. And that, I mean, that just is. There is no gray area. Yes, she is consenting to sex, but a child cannot consent. So, you know what I mean? Like, so we always think of, I think part of our problem in the black community is we have a very narrow view of what rape is and what consent is. You know, and so it is rape to have sex with someone who is under 18 because they cannot legally consent. And they cannot legally consent because we as adults know they don't know what they're doing. They don't understand the gravitas of the decisions that they're trying to make. So we set that up to try to protect them. So this idea that, you know, they're fast and so they're participating in their own oppression, I can't deal with that. You know, I know a lot of people always are telling to me, what about the parents? What about the parents? What about the parents? Firstly, all of the idea that parents sold their children to R. Kelly for record deals or that he was paying them off the whole time he was having sex with them, that comes from the black community. That is not something that R. Kelly has said happened. We created those excuses out of complete thin air. You know what I mean? So that is something for us to think about. Like, a lot of the things I hear, I say, where did you hear that from? R. Kelly has never said that. You know, he did not say, like, later on, like very recently, he said, oh, something about the parents and this, that, and the other, blah, blah. But for years, the black community has been saying that about the parents just out of sheer misogyny, just out of complete made up support of this man. That is not the case in the vast majority of these cases. What we see is families finding out what's happened, and I'll double back. Families finding out what's happened, immediately taking R. Kelly to court, and his lawyer going, "You can't win that, settle."
Right.
And them having to make a decision. People get very sanctimonious about the decision that parents make. But let's think about Monica Lewinsky, right? She committed a sexual indiscretion when she was 21. And now Monica Lewinsky could cure cancer. She could cure AIDS. She could solve world hunger. All we will ever talk about is that she sucked off the president, ever. And who wants that for their 14-year-old, their 15-year-old, their 16-year-old?
And so a lot of times these parents settle because they just don't want the shame following their kids.
So we want them to make a decision that's in all of our best interests, right? We want them to go to court. We want them to be on the courtroom steps with the details and all that stuff. But they have to make a decision that's in the best interest of their baby. And that is preserving that child's anonymity so that they can move past this in their life. And that's a hard decision, I'm sure, for many of them to make. Also, if that child has been with R. Kelly any period of time, they need counseling. R. Kelly's picking up girls on the south side of Chicago at the McDonald's, at the high school. These are not famous, rich parents with a crap ton of means who, you know, can pay for child's therapy and they can pay for lawyers or whatever. So this money is their ability to try to heal and take care of their child after this trauma has happened.
Life,
Right. And so we judge them for that, but most people right now, all these people watching, you know, Facebook Live, will not get on their social media and say how much money they make, right? Nobody will say that, how much money I make. But you want a 14-year-old to get up on the every network in America and tell you all of the degrading, sexual, and humiliating things that happened to her, and then have that follow her for the rest of her life, but you won't tell me what your paycheck looks like.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just kind of like, I think people are judging on these decisions that, you know, Monday night quarterbacking, what are very difficult decisions for these parents to make. You know, people also say, well, you know, they introduced their daughter to R. Kelly. Well, that's another example of black people talking out two sides of their mouth. Because you have a large contingent of black people who say he was acquitted and he's innocent. Well, if he's innocent, what's wrong with introducing your child to him? You know what I mean? I have no problem if, I don't know, Don Cheadle showed up, I would introduce my 15-year-old goddaughter to him. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, so if you think he's innocent, then they were making a decision that they felt was like in the best interest of furthering their child's career because they thought he was innocent. So you can't say, why would you do it?
Well, see, with and I can't remember, the daughter's name was Avriel. I can't remember.
Azriel.
Azriel. I have an Avriel that watches me. Azriel. And I know they were from like Baltimore, but they live in like Florida. For me, what was difficult for me to wrap my brain around with them was that they took her to an R. Kelly concert with them. That was what was hard for me, because for me, I just felt like, because she was about 15 or 16, because I remember she was driving age,
right.
And then they let her go on the stage, and we've all kind of heard stories of what happens when they go on stage. So I can't imagine being a father and allowing my daughter to come to an R. Kelly concert with me, but then to allow my daughter to go on stage with a grown ass man,
right? And
then they said something about she got his phone number or something because they started texting it, and she drove to the hotel. They didn't know she was going. So for me, it felt like they knew, they had suspicions of him because they kept enforcing to her, reinforcing, do not go meet him without us. You know, so it was like they knew something. So for me, that was what I struggled with.
Right.
What I applaud is it was so amazing and so brave of the young girl who said she contracted herpes. And I'd be willing to bet she wasn't the only one, but she was the one that was bravest to get on there and sit on there and talk about that. And that was one of the things that I saw when I watched it, just how much courage it took. Not even her, but not just her, but the other girl, and I can't remember her name. I want to say her name. She was the girl who she was flying back and forth. She was sitting in like a light pale blue jacket. And she said I think she's married now. I'm trying to remember one of her details, but she was on the show and she talked about how she knew that the young girl, she found out later that the young girl that they were having sex with was 13.
Van Allen.
Yes. She was so courageous to me. Like, I mean, she was so forthcoming. I mean, they all were very forthcoming, but I just imagine, you know, I thought about all of the crew that was there filming.
Right.
And then you're sitting in front of a camera and you're telling all of this.
The entire world.
Yes. I just thought how courageous that was.
Right.
And you can't get that many people to be able to do that, to go back to your point.
Absolutely. And you know, the Clarys, I'm sure, get the majority of kind of the judgment, you know, because they did take their daughter to the concert and this, that, and the other. But what isn't on there is that they were having, I think, some issues with their daughter already. Okay. And so part of it sounded to me, because I was in another interview with the father, is that we took her with us because she could not leave our side. Like, we had to. So they were very much trying to be, I think, controlling and diligent parents. Yeah. Like, so it was the husband's birthday, but we had to take her. Like, we could not leave her at home. Right. So there were already things happening with her that then R. Kelly kind of threw a monkey wrench into. Right. If you look up, there's I think a video on YouTube of her singing. She's a wonderful singer. You know, and so they were trying to balance the things. You know, part of what they say in the video is that, you know, she came and she threw a fit and this, that, and the other. They've already got things going on with this daughter that then R. Kelly comes and steps into. You know, and so they're trying to manage this. And they were very, you know, one thing that is amazing to me about them is they have 6 kids. So they are taking off work, and there was a point where someone is always with her. Mama's with her, daddy's with her, brother's with her, sister's with her. Like, they're always trying to be diligent. So they're trying to help her in the way that they know how to help for her career. They're in the middle of Florida somewhere. Where are they ever going to meet? Right, yeah. You know, another famous person that might be able to help their daughter. And we cannot say that R. Kelly has not helped some careers. He's helped many people's careers, right? So they're trying to manage these things. All of these things are so layered. I just feel like we want to judge people's decisions when we weren't there in the day-to-day. We don't know the context. What we do know is that R. Kelly has made this his business for 25 straight years. And just like parents are figuring it out on the go, right? I mean, you know, children are your biggest work of art. They're also your biggest challenge. You're trying to figure it out as you go along. R. Kelly has gotten up every day for the past 25 years and perfected how to be a predator. What it is I need to say, how it is I need to act,
and how he evolved too.
Right. How I isolate you from your parents.
Absolutely.
You know, he has figured this out now.
And then started to go after
girls. Am I exploiting?
Yeah. And then started going after girls that were closer to 18.
Exactly. Not, you know, right. How do I do this legally? Because I think the the legal age of consent, I think in Chicago or someplace is 17. So okay, we get him at 17. Right. You know what I mean? So he has evolved his practice, and parents were trying to figure it out. You know, people go, where were the parents all the time? Where were the parents? Well, where were your parents when you were skipping school?
Yeah.
Where was your parents when you had sex for the first time?
Yeah.
Did they know where you were and what you were doing? You know what I mean? Like this idea that, oh, it wouldn't happen to my child. Everybody does that. My mother always loves to tell the story about coming up to summer camp or to school and somebody being like, oh, are you Enrique's mother? And she's beaming with pride, like, yes, because she knows I'm a great student, I'm smart. And they'd be like, well, she did so-and-so. And her being shocked. Like, there's no way my child did those things, right? You know, we all think, of course, my child would never. And that's part of it. A lot of the parents who might have introduced their child to R. Kelly thought, I have raised her better. She is smarter. You know, he was acquitted, so I don't believe that those women were lying. Those women were gold diggers. My daughter's not any of that. You know, so I mean, they thought that they were safe. They thought they had put safeguards in place. One of the other women who's there, Joycelyn, her mother.
That's the one that was on the TMZ.
Correct. So her mother had no idea that she had his number, because when they met, the mother took his information. So the mother and the father went with her every single time. He has figured this out.
Right.
He's got bodyguards and assistants and stuff who will slip somebody this, that, and the other. Like, he has figured out how to isolate these girls from their parents, and the parents figure out too late what has happened.
Because, you know, when I looked at that docuseries, like the personal assistant, I can't remember his name, he said he was the one that helped alter
the marriage license
for Aaliyah. I believe he needs to be in jail. Like, he was there to help corroborate a lot of this stuff.
Right.
And it's like, how do we go about trying to bring forth charges against somebody like him who really actively participated in that whole thing?
You know, and I think that the dominoes kind of fall from the top down, right? So if R. Kelly when R. Kelly is brought to justice, I'm sure part of his deal is going to be to try to get as less time as possible and maybe start flipping on these folks. Who knows? You know what I mean? I don't know if we'll ever be able to convict all the people that helped this happen. I hope that we will, because I mean it just takes such a network of amoral people. When they talked about in the docuseries, one of the girls had escaped from the house. I think it was Azriel who had escaped from the house, and the bodyguards went and brought her back. R. Kelly didn't go out in the street and grab her. Like, I don't know what kind of morals you would have to do that. So I mean, I hope they all go down, but the person we know for sure should go down is R. Kelly.
So when you look at the whole series, the 3 days, what did you think? Did you think that were there things that you think were missing that they could have been better about, or did you really look at it and think this is a really good holistic look at?
I thought it was a very good holistic look.
I did too.
I thought they did a really good job of kind of showing you the progression of this, interspersing the stories from the ladies. I thought they were very graphic, especially, like you said, Lisa Van Allen, like, to admit that you also sexually abused a 14-year-old. And finding that out, and how devastating a thing, you know, when she said, that girl, my daughter's older than that girl. You know what I mean? Like, how just, I don't know that I would be able to admit that out into the world, to say I took that tape. So also that girl's humiliation is out in the world because she took that tape and it got into someone else's hands, who then sent it to the news or whatever. You know what I mean?
And that was so revelatory for me. It was just like, so that's how the tape got out. Like, the fact that she had taken it, and then she left it in a hotel room, and then she went back and got it, and then she gave it to somebody to hold, because she was scared of him. He is violent. Like, I was like, so that's how the tape actually got out? Like, that was fascinating to me. But what I thought was also brilliant about the docuseries was how they had the therapists, the different ones, to kind of talk about behavior of a sex offender, and even of victims. Like, I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
Because we underestimate how abuse rewires your brain. And it's especially, you know, one part of the docuseries, one of the women said, you know, R. Kelly told her, I think it was Kitty who said that he told her that he had some women who were with him for 15 years, some women who have been with him for 5 years. And the way he has them isolated, even from each other, the only voice in their head now is his, for years and years and years. Your brain is rewired. Because
he couldn't even talk to anybody else. They couldn't talk to any other guy or anybody else that came into the room.
They are literally in rooms locked away until he wants them for something or lets them out.
Because when I heard about that cult thing, I was like, okay, this sounds a little far-fetched.
Right.
Like, I just didn't believe it.
Right.
I was like, a cult? Mm-hmm. And then when the whole TMZ thing happened with Joycelyn,
Right.
and she said,
And people
no,
are like, why can't they just walk away? They're not in a cult. Cults are about brain.
It's about brain, because
cults are not necessarily about
captivity.
physical intimidation, right? And
Yeah,
captivity. People go to cults and then voluntarily stay because their brain has been rewired. We have to think about Jonestown. Hundreds of people drank a drink they knew that was going to kill them and their children. That man had changed their way of thinking. And that's what R. Kelly has done. So people, I've been inundated with emails. If we know they're in the studio, why don't we just all run up to the studio and get those girls out? Why? Because they're going to go right back. Their brain is wired a certain way at this point. Because we have to figure out how to get them the help that they need. Mm-hmm. It really, like they say, it takes 7 times
for a woman to
actually leave an abuser, right? So this is a process. This is not going to be kind of an overnight. This is somebody hitting rock bottom and then saying, I need help. Right. And you see that the younger ones tend to stay with him longer, like Kitty, who was in her 30s. Dominique, and I'm blanking on Asante, who was in her 30s when they met. They did not stay as long because he had met them, when they had already had a different kind of identity. And
they had developed a bit more.
And they had a different self-identity, right? So they were able to see quicker that this is not, what I'm able to do. He's targeting 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds because that's right at the point when you're forming your identity. That's right at the point when you're starting to date and you're figuring out what's normal, what I like, what I don't like, who I am. I can remember the pressure from older people to be adult. Like, oh, we all over here smoking. Well, you don't smoke? Oh, I thought you was grown. You know what I mean? You feel kind of like,
and for me, it was sex. For me, it was sex.
Grown.
Coming into the gay community, I had older guys saying, oh, Craig, you could be fucking out of both legs of your underwear. Right. Like, why aren't you? And these were people that were living with HIV. And I'm like, you would think that you would encourage me to do something different than what you were doing. You know what I mean? So it is about all of that.
And so that's why he's targeting young girls. It's that I can get them right at that moment where they're and I can decide who they become for them.
Because even to your point about the whole captivity thing, they weren't being held captive because and correct me if I'm wrong, all of them were the ones that left. They just said, "Oh, I just left one day." They left. Like Kitty, she said she got to the airport. She cried. Said she was going to call him because she was going to go back to the house because she was so haunted by what she thought people were going to say. Her friends and family members were going to say, well, what happened? And she felt stupid. And she called him and she said, if he picks up this phone, I'm going back to the house. And the only reason she didn't go back was because he didn't answer the phone. But to your point, Asante, the other one, she said, I just left. I had enough and I left. So it's not like he kept them in captivity.
But there also is some of that. Because there also is some of them being locked in rooms for days on end.
And not even being able to eat for 3 days.
Exactly. So it's mind games. That is what people who are predators do. It's mind games, right? I can remember there's a meme going around about something like an elephant. Like you can tie him to a tree or whatever, but if you kind of beat the will out of him, you can just tie him to a water bottle.
He
doesn't know that. He's not going to move because he thinks he can't go anywhere, and that's basically what R. Kelly has done to these women. So even when they're not with him, their mind is enslaved, you know what I mean, in kind of what he's molded them to be. And people are so judgmental about this. If you have not been through this, then I really feel like you don't have any right to talk about the decisions that these people are making. You know what I mean? Like, I have not been, thank God, in any of that kind of a relationship. So to me, it's like, oh, I would just leave, or I would blah, 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 or whatever. But I also didn't have anybody from the time I was 14 completely sweep me off my feet, make me feel like this is the most important relationship in the world, isolate me from all of my loved ones, and control every aspect of my life. And who knows who I would be if that had happened, and what decisions I would make. Clearly, they're not thinking in their right minds. That's why we have failed them as a community, because we should have been the safety net for these girls, and we were not.
So this docuseries has really made me think. I have nieces, and it really has made me think about what is it that we, the adults in their lives, and the adults that are in the lives of the children, like young girls and even young boys, because like we said, what is it that we need to give our girls? Like, because like I tweeted about this the other day, this docuseries. I absolutely think that that docuseries, it needs to be shown and taught in elementary or middle schools. But then you'd have the argument with parents who say, "Oh, that's too early for them to know about sex."
It's a little much.
But I just think that, but if he's going after girls that are 12 and 13, I mean, shit, they got to be in middle school when they show it.
Right. Well, part of the answer for both boys and girls is teaching our young people about their body ownership and autonomy from very young. Mm-hmm. So during the holiday season, for example, the Girl Scouts released an article that said, stop making little girls go hug family members.
Yes.
Right? So this idea, and this is, the black community is notorious for this. Go hug grandma, go give so-and-so a kiss.
Uncle such and such.
Go over there and do whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And kids will be kind of, and you be like, don't be like that. And you
go on over there and kiss them.
But what you're teaching them is, one, their body is not their own.
They can't say no.
They cannot say no to an adult.
Yes.
Right? And that if they do, and you're telling them that this is correct behavior and them not doing it is wrong behavior. So if something happens, they're not going to tell you. Because you told them that it was wrong behavior.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And if somebody preys on them, an adult, they're not going to have the power to say no.
Exactly. And part of what happens, which is always so heartbreaking to me, is these things happen. Most children don't say anything at all to their parents. Mm-hmm. If their parents had known, most parents are super diligent. They would have been all over it. They would have been over the perpetrator. They would have been, on you with therapy or whatever it was you needed. Most parents never know because little things have ingrained in them from young that they can't say anything. Mm-hmm. When I feel like a lot of people talking about R. Kelly, in their homes, and they're going, them girls is fast, and say that your children are listening to that.
Absolutely.
Right? So then if something happens to them in college or whatever, do you think they're going to come home and tell you because they think you're going to go, why was you at that party?
Right.
And what did you wear? And how many drinks did you have? And why did you leave with him? And all
you're going to interrogate them.
You're not going to support them. Exactly.
I posted something today that said, it was something that I saw and I reposted it, and it said, for those of you that are still making excuses for R. Kelly and supporting him, your children, that's the reason that your children are going to come to you when their uncle or your boyfriend or whomever is touching them.
Right. And so we need to listen to kids. I am all for, yes, your children have to greet adults, when they come into a room. Mm-hmm. But that is not kissing. That is not touching. I know, when I was young, you get in an argument, your mama say, come give me a hug, and you'd be like mad or whatever. Mm-hmm. She wouldn't force me. She wouldn't grab me and be like, hug me, child. Right. We will get back to, but you need to be teaching them, that they need to take some ownership of, no, I don't like that. I don't like the way that feels. I don't want to do that right now. Right. From the time that they're young. And you need to be open in your communication with them, not necessarily about the explicities of sex, but about intimate touch, and who is I have a girlfriend, they're doing such a wonderful job with their son, but they're very open about bodies. He might see his mother naked or his father naked or whatever, and he might go to, touch your booty, like, no, this is my body, and that's your body, so it's very much about, this is ownership. Nobody gets to touch you in any kind of way you don't want, and you don't get to touch me, and she, kids will climb all over you and stuff, and she has been very much like, no, I don't feel like being touched right now, so they have that vocabulary that going already. Yeah. And that's so important for our kids if we want them to talk to us about the things that happen.
Right. And one of the conversations that I think we need to have more with children, this is just a society thing, period. We need to start having the conversation sooner with our children about sex too. But oftentimes parents don't introduce the conversation because they feel like if I start talking about it, then in some way I'm giving you permission or telling you to go and start having sex. Right. And that's not the case. You're really empowering them and giving them tools.
It's really about, we isolate sex from the talk of biology and your body altogether, right? So we're not talking about sex. We're not talking about boys having nocturnal emissions. We're not talking about girls starting their period. We put all these things in these little boxes. One of the things that my mother did when we were really young is we always had books about our bodies and how they work. Always. So it was not an explicit discussion about sex, but I know a boy's penis and how it works, and I know my vagina and how it works, and I know how reproduction works, and it's just the natural part of our body. One of my favorite memories from childhood is I have two sisters, and we were all in my mother's room, and she came out the shower and she was naked, and we all started giggling. We're little, we all was like, bless, and all that kind of stuff, and she made us all get naked. and stand in front of the mirror until we stopped giggling.
Right.
And her thing was like, look, everybody got the same stuff.
Right.
Like there's nothing taboo about body. It's not shameful. It's not funny. This is what we all got. This is how it works. So it was a very kind of gradual conversation then as things are changing, as you're getting hair places or whatever.
Yeah.
This is just a continuation about your body and how it works. So it doesn't have to be like, let's have a heavy conversation.
Right.
But if you're talking to them constantly about their development, then it's a natural part as they get older.
And and when I was young, I remember my mom was like, come on in here. Like she'd be in the tub or something.
Right.
And I was young. And she said, come on in here. Like I'd come in there to either use the bathroom or come in there to say, like she couldn't hear me. I was asking her.
Right.
So she come in so I could hear you. And I remember my father pulled me to the side. I don't remember how old I was. He said, okay, you're getting too old for that now. You stop going to the bathroom. You know what I mean? So we had those kinds of conversations.
Right.
So it's just important to start doing
it's like
that.
when I started growing breasts or whatever. I can remember my father would always walk into our rooms. We weren't allowed to close doors in the house, but we lived on different levels. But he would walk into our room all the time. And one time he walked in while I was changing. And he said something and he like left really quick and closed the door behind him, which I was like, close the door. But after that, he always like me from the side.
From the side, right.
Like this, but it is imperative that we talk to children about their bodies and about ownership of their bodies.
Because, like to your point, I have a niece and she's starting to grow breasts. And I remember like maybe a year and a half ago, I was going into her room and I think she had her door closed and I think I had knocked. But I started to go in right after I knocked. And she said, Craig, like she was, I said, oh, girl, I'm so sorry.
Right.
So from that point on, I just never did that again.
Right.
And I've just learned to love her and show her affection differently than I do my nephews.
Right.
Like I have a nephew who's younger than she is, her brother, and he's very affectionate, but she doesn't want love from me in that way. Like I have to hug her when she comes for the hug. Like I can't, you know what I mean? So it's just about giving them what they need, what they crave.
Absolutely.
So in terms of the MuteRKelly movement, if you're just tuning in, this is Oranike. She is one of the co-founders of the MuteRKelly movement. You saw her on the Surviving R. Kelly docuseries. What's next for the movement? I know that you're going to continue to try to stop his live performances, but like, is there another milestone that perhaps we can help you guys with?
Well, he has an upcoming concert in Germany, so we're working right now to try to get that canceled.
What's the date of that one? Do you know?
April 19th.
Okay, so it's in April. Okay.
Yep. So, and what he's done now is they have stopped advertising a lot of his concerts until like
the very
right
last
before,
minute.
exactly.
And see, that's why I said it's important for us to get to that social media. If there's a way that we can shut down like a Facebook page or his Instagram page, because he can use that to promote it, especially if he has millions of followers.
Yeah, but he's not doing anything on any of those that violate their code of ethics, so, and I don't know if they have any morality. Right. So people are diligent. We get emails immediately. If somebody sees something pop up in their city, they hit us. If people go to MuteRKelly.org, they can sign up on our mailing list.
Okay.
And whenever we have a protest or a call to action, something that we need the community to do, we send it out.
Okay.
So for Germany, we just sent out the email and the social media accounts for all the promoters. Like hit them up and tell them to cancel it. To the venue. We're doing that. Calling for people who have servicemen or military family in Germany, because that's the largest group of people who would attend an R. Kelly concert in Germany are going to be the service people that are stationed over there. Yeah. If you've got folks, call them and have this conversation with them about why they should not be.
Share this video and this podcast.
Absolutely. So they can absolutely get involved in that way. But for us, we definitely want to take this. Hopefully, when we can, have some kind of justice in this R. Kelly case, and for us. I always tell people we're trying to put him in the jailhouse or the poorhouse.
Okay.
Or
both.
Right. Or both. Hopefully both.
Right.
But once we can hopefully get that taken care of, we can really start expanding this conversation to talk about the Black community. I had no idea the level of sexual abuse of young men and women in the Black community before starting this. And then I was just inundated and depressed and really, really sad for the community that there's so many people. You have no idea. People I've worked with, I've gone to school with, so many people sent me messages that they were sexually abused as children. So many people sent me long emails with very descriptive passages about what happened to them and how that's affected them. And we are failing our young people when we don't do anything about this. And we are failing our young people when we continue to play R. Kelly and normalize this kind of behavior. We're just failing them. There's nothing innocent about playing him in your household or listening to him on the radio or going to his concert. You are supporting violence. And that violence might come right back around and bite you and your family in the butt. You know what I mean? Like, so we have to say we're not tolerating this in any facet of our life because we are failing our community and we're failing our children on a daily basis and in massive numbers.
That's MuteRKelly.org. Go to the website, subscribe, join the mailing list. Is your social media, do you have social media for that as well?
Yes, so on Instagram and Facebook, it's official Mute R. Kelly. On Twitter, it's OFF Mute R. Kelly. But you can find all of that stuff on our website. We have a lot of, my favorite part of the website is the part where we kind of answer some of the questions that everyone always asks. Well, what about the fast girls? Or what about the parents? Well, why go after him? All those kind of things that come up in the barbershop that everybody, all the excuses people make, I got them listed out there and I have our position on them. So please read those, because if you're going to have this conversation with your family and your friends, all those things are going to come up. So it helps give you talking points to discuss this. It has a timeline of abuse. So if you're not clear about what happened every year, it goes year by year and talks about all of the cases, all of the accusations, all of the settlements, everything that's happened. There's lots of media on there, stuff that you can read and watch. And you can, again, like I said, sign up on our mailing list if you want to help.
Is this what you're doing full time now?
No, child. No. I have like a million jobs.
Really?
And this is... this has taken on a life of its own. So I'm busy, and and I don't want this to be
your full time.
I told a friend of mine, like, this is not my calling, and he was like, sometimes your calling calls you.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, but I was like, this is not the thing I'm trying to be known for in my life. But I just had to do something, and it has snowballed into something completely outside. I really thought and this is honest to goodness, I thought I'm gonna do this petition. I'm gonna send it to them. They're gonna stop playing them,
and that's gonna be it, right?
I mean, I thought 2 days tops, and we'll be done with it. And here we are 2 years later.
So once, because I'm thinking that there is going, because now Georgia has opened up a case.
And
for those who may not
Chicago
know,
DA has asked for victims or witnesses to come forward also, so that they can begin an investigation.
Right. So I'm optimistic that something is going to happen soon. So once he's convicted, what happens? Do you mute somebody else?
I go on
next?
vacation. No, boo, I'm done. People ask me all the time, you need to mute. This is what they go. This is how the emails like
they got a list of who you can mute.
Why don't you guys do And my standard response is, the black woman is not a pack mule for you to put the world problems on my back.
My shoulders.
Right. There is enough problems of the world to go around to everybody. And if you see something in your community that you want to deal with it. Don't send it to me.
Listen, Nike, I got the black gays, okay? I got the black gays, and that's a handful in and of itself.
Activate them, put them on it. Everybody, if they're, because people are, oh my God, what about Woody Allen? If Woody Allen is your sticking point, then start a campaign against Woody Allen.
Absolutely.
Do not send me no emails about who else I should, whatever. There's this thing that people feel like somebody who's doing something should do everything while everybody else does nothing. That does not work.
Right.
Like, I'm not doing everything. I did this thing. I moved that ball forward. You may take that ball and run with it as far as you want to go. Right.
Now, how do you guys, in terms of resources, how do you guys get, do you have donations? And
We've had a donation link on there forever. 3 days ago was the first time we ever started getting donations. We have been doing this out of our pocket for 2 years.
So the docuseries was really good for you guys.
Before that, I think, no, I'm not going to say it's the first time, because a few people who are connected to me, gave $20 here, $5 there, which is totally useful, because we're paying for our website, we're doing social media posts, we're printing banners and flyers for all these different cities. Kenya is flying to these places to help organize. We're doing that out of our pocket.
Out of your pocket. And you've been doing it for the past 2 years.
For 2 years, we have been doing this out of our pocket.
So the website again, people, is MuteRKelly.org. That's ORG. That's the website for all the information. If you want to make a donation, please go there. We're my pen pals. I need y'all to go over there and support my girl. They're really doing good work. So, I only ask you to support when it's really, really important and it's really, really meaningful. I'm going to go over there and I'm going to make a donation.
Oh, thank you, bro.
Yes, I'm going to do that because I appreciate you coming here to share this story further with us. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I forgot. Are there any questions? Anybody else in here have any questions?
Now's your time because my email is jam-packed, so I might not be able to answer.
Right.
Send me an email.
I've tagged Nikkei or Nikkei. I know her personally, so I keep saying Nikkei. I tagged Aura Nikkei. Her name is tagged in the video. It's at the top. She's going to share it on her Facebook as well. I think that's. I don't know if I have any other questions. Did you guys have any questions? Yes, that's the website, MuteRKelly.org.
And to everybody who's been so supportive, if you've sent messages or whatever, I thank you so much. This is really heavy.
Yeah.
It can be depressing work. And when we first started, we were getting inundated with hate mail. So I really appreciate all the support.
Somebody asked, do you think he's going to get convicted?
I hope so. It's our laws are set up not necessarily in the interest of justice, but in the interest of those in power, right? So why is there a statute of limitations on rape? You know what I mean? Like, especially childhood sexual abuse. Well, that's set up because old white men made the laws and old white men was out here raping and they wanted, they want this to be able to follow them around forever. So there are a lot of technicalities involved in your ability to try to get a criminal case, which is why so many of the families had to go for civil cases.
Right.
Because criminally they did not have, or it had passed the statute or whatever it was.
Right.
So it's definitely my hope. I hope the Chicago is full up of R. Kelly stories. I have not met anybody from Chicago between the age of 35 and 50 who does not have a story of R. Kelly trying to pick them up at the mall, who messed with their girlfriend, all this, that, and the other. Like, they got the receipts.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful that, people, the Chicago folks will step up. People who have been complicit in this, I hope will step up and say, yeah, I saw, I did, I know, and I'll testify. But we'll see.
And I think it's equally important for men to get involved.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's really important. It sends a stronger message, I think, even in some instances, when men step up and say, this behavior is wrong. Right. We're starting to see more artists. Like, I saw Tank posted something on his Instagram the other day, and he mentioned it. Omarion mentioned it because R. Kelly wrote quite a few of B2K's hits, and they're, of course, now on tour.
Right.
And so one of the things that Omarion said was that because they've already got the playlist or set a list already in order for this tour, and the fans will be very, very disappointed. He said, but after this run of this tour, they're going to remove the songs that he wrote from the playlist.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, black men definitely, we talk about cleaning our own house. Black men need to start checking other black men on the predatory behavior that they see. So often it's kind of like, people be like, oh man, that dude's wilding, but they're not gonna check him because I ain't no snitch and I ain't no hater.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right.
But we have to think about community, folks. So we have to start checking folks on what we see them doing. And it's one thing for women to say, you a dog, you this, that, and the other. It's another thing for a black man to come to another black man like, yo, that's not all right. And we need to see more of that.
I agree. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for sharing this video. They're asking me to ask you about Andrea Kelly. She's posting this video. Now, I do believe that one of the videos where she's riding around singing Happy People, I think that's an old video.
It is an old video. It's like 2 years ago.
It's like 2 years ago. But then I saw a video today. Somebody sent me a video today where she was talking about his genius and you can't take that from him and da-da-da-da. So I'm sure that what they're asking, and part of what I was feeling is, okay, so are you going to mute him or are you going to keep playing him? Which side are you on? Because she tells this story all of the time, and I don't doubt that any of it happened. But she tells the story, she's crying and she's so passionate about it, but then on another, it feels like you're celebrating him.
Right. Well, a few things. One, those videos are old, right? So up until a certain point, and she says this in the documentary, she was doing a lot of things in the interest of the well-being of her children.
Of her children, yeah.
Right? So, she was not, I'm not shit-talking them in the news, I'm not, doing all, because I have these three children
to think about.
And that's their father, right? We also know about the lasting psychological effects of abuse.
Yeah.
Right? So it is just now that she has found the strength to say out loud the things that happen. You know what I mean? So up until this point, she was in denial about being abused, and was felt a sense of shame about what happened, and was hiding all of this from the entire world. Part of hiding things is putting on masks. That's what people do. So she's putting on masks for the public about her life. You know, and now the mask is gone, and people want to judge her for having had a mask ever at all.
In the first place.
Right, and that's not fair.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was in an argument, because sometimes I got time. Sometimes I got time on Instagram. So I was in an argument with somebody a couple of days ago with that same thing. They sending me this, and they want to use that as an example how they're all lying because of this video, you know, of Andrea Kelly. And I am like, so many of y'all got family pictures all through the years with the people who abused you. You know what I mean? Like, most of us are laughing to keep from crying about some aspect of our life every single day.
I talked to a friend of mine the other day, and she said to me she was abused by her uncle, and she said, Craig, I see him every Thanksgiving. She said, I keep him at a distance.
Right.
She said, but I keep him at a distance.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But I see him every Thanksgiving.
And so if I were then to look through her family scrapbook and see pictures of her at Thanksgiving smuling next to him, who am I to say, oh, he didn't really abuse you?
Right.
You smiling next to him. You had dinner with him.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, what a mother will do in the best interest of her children is often sacrifice herself, right? So she has been putting on this persona for the safety of her kids, because think about her children now, right? I mean, I don't know if they've watched it, but you know, she says in there, you know, people telling her, your father, you can't sit at the lunch table with your father. Yes. I mean, what a terrible thing for them. So whatever she did to try to keep that house in order, to try to keep them having some sense of pride in their father, because we know children's self-esteem is very much tied into their parents.
Absolutely.
So whatever she did as a mother to try to keep that balance, I can't fault her for any of that. And all the judgment, all the after the facts, what we want to say about her, I think is real sanctimonious of us, because we're all out here. Like I said, I mean, I cry in the car about something at least once a month, but every other day you're going to see me on Instagram smiling, and you're going to be like, oh, you weren't going through nothing, girl. You were at the club 2 days ago. That's not how life works. Right. So.
Yeah, that's true. So are you familiar with, there's a protest or something at a studio this Saturday in Chicago?
Yes. So the MuteRKelly chapter of Chicago has organized, and I guess that's that corner. I'm not really sure about the address, but they're doing a candlelight vigil honoring victims of sexual assault and the victims of R. Kelly.
Okay, so that's this
I
Saturday.
hope that is... I believe so, yes.
Okay.
So I do hope all the Chicago folks come out and show their support, because that's important. You know, part of how he's able to keep these women is by continually telling them nobody's thinking about them, nobody cares about you, nobody loves you but me. And so even if they're inside and they can hear that support and that love, that helps put cracks in that armor. So that's important. So I hope that it's a great turnout for that in Chicago.
Okay, so that's this Saturday in Chicago. If you're listening to the podcast, it's going to drop immediately. So this is timely. So if you're listening to it, it's this coming Saturday in Chicago. And then, of course, we have the concert in Germany in April that we're going to go over to MuteRKelly.org. So you can participate in that. You can make a little donation to the organization to continue to help them with what they're doing, to continue to fuel their efforts.
Right.
So, all right, so I think that's it. I think we've answered all of the questions. If you need to go back to the beginning of this video, you can. Thank you so very much for tuning in. Thank you for those of you that shared this video. I appreciate it. And thank you for those of you that are over here on the So Much to Say podcast. We're available for free in Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, wherever you listen to a podcast. We are there, baby. All right? Thank you so very much for all that you do to support what I do. And please support MuteRKelly.org.
Thank you so much.
All right? Bye.